Right, and just to put the location in perspective for all the audience, Camrose is located, if I'm not mistaken, right at the southeast of the city of Edmonton. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. So
yeah, it's about an hour from Edmonton.
Correct.
Yeah.
And
to the southeast. Yeah.
As you were saying, it's a pretty small city, but the scenery over there is pretty amazing. And I can remember I was doing a couple of projects and in that area the past year, and I noticed a lot of activity in the renovation of some roads, some main roads there. Was that part of that redevelopment plan, or?
The roadway upgrades, there were some kind of neighborhood upgrades in 2018, but for downtown, it started in 2019, end of 2019. Right? And it's still ongoing. It's going to take several years. But just to go back to that initial comment, so to create a plan like this, we had like a special firm to do a retail market analysis for us. So to get the data right, we have a special firm to do a transportation analysis. We had another special consultant doing infrastructure analysis, because the infrastructure in downtown is so old that you had to do like an investigation to understand like where are the gaps in terms of capacity, and gaps in terms of the lifespan of the infrastructure, right? So it's a kind of a complex problem. So those things, I think they don't matter to the regular people. You can make somebody attached to raw data until you create a purpose for that raw data. And that's what we try to do. So we get that information and say, there are things that we can do about this. Let's face them with courage and see what the problems are and come up with solutions.
And thank you for you to give a little bit of more understanding about the data information, right? Because I was thinking, well, what type of data? But now that you are saying that it's a different type of analysis about the transportation infrastructure and how the people live or walk or whatnot. So basically what you're saying is you form part of a bigger team in order to kind of recollect the data that is useful for you in order to kind of take decision for the planning. Is that right?
Yeah. Like for instance, through the retail market analysis, we found out that the trade area for the main street goes up to some cities in Saskatchewan. Because people from Saskatchewan come to Main Street in downtown just to do some errands and around some like special boutiques for clothing there. So that kind of interesting. So you have to plan for that kind of a customers as well. We are aiming for, and I say that like that's what I'm thinking about, scale, right? So Camrose is about 21,000 people. We are aiming to create residence for 2,000 more people in downtown, which is 10% of the population. So if you can put 10% of the population in downtown, this is a win-win for who lives there and for the municipality. And at the same time, if you can inspire the students to stay in the community after they graduate, right? Like because people they're there for temporarily, but they feel more attached to the city. Like you go to university for 4 years and you live there. If there is nothing that can attach you to that community, then you're just gonna go and take the job someplace else, right? But we're creating something that we hope that a small percentage of the students also is going to remain in the city in the future. Population it's that critical mass to sustain a community, right? If you don't if you don't retain your population, especially like you're well educated, then they go away, and the community is going to start facing a hard time. So we will that's the end game, is to make people, retain people, attract more people, even attract more visitors, attract more tourists, but also retain population in the future.
Right. And now that we are touching base about this study case in the city of Cambros, how do you think COVID will impact the research that you did for this redevelopment? It will changing a lot, or what do you think?
I think the COVID-19 is going to impact how we design and plan public spaces altogether, not just like in Camrose, like, but everywhere. And that's why I think it was very important that we proposed, and there were challenges, but we proposed that some of the streets will be closed, right? There will be pedestrian streets, at least for certain days or certain times of the day. And that there was pushback, like there's some people that don't understand why, or they think that this is going to create problems for traffic, or it is going to take customers away from certain areas because they cannot find a parking space in front of the store. But now, with all the personal space importance that we have in the pandemic, now it makes more sense to say, okay, so we can try to have a certain level of normal, if I can call this normal, but we don't have to just stay at home. And if we can allow some personal space, so people can go to a park and have that separation distance, they can go to a plaza, they can walk on the sidewalk. So you need like larger sidewalks. That was designed already. You need the streets sometimes closed because the sidewalk is not wide enough. So all those things, they were very challenging, and now they start to make more sense.
Right. And no, that makes totally sense. And maybe here, like changing a little bit the topic in terms of strategies for extreme weather, right? So in terms of carbon emissions and the translation to avoid in a portion, the change of that is the means to make more walkable cities, right? And part of that is what you're mentioning with Cambros, right? But for example, for me, and this is pretty funny because I've met a lot of Canadians here, and they always tell me, like, from where you're coming from? Well, from Mexico. And what you're doing here, right? Well, actually, I'm not coming from the Caribbean area, right? So I'm coming from the actual northwest of the country, which is a desert, and the weather there is again pretty extreme, right? So I can remember, like, if you see somebody walking in the street at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and I don't know, in the month of July, you either think that this person doesn't have other choice, or is crazy, right? Because it's heat over there at that point in time is pretty extreme. But coming here, we can talk about the extreme weather also. Well, when certain days of the winter time, you can just reach up to minus 40 degrees Celsius, right? And at wind chill as well. So in terms of walkable spaces, what are the strategies that urban planners have think of in terms of make walkable cities in areas with extreme weather? So do you have like something in mind in order to you can share that with us?
Well, I have a couple of things, and that relates to how I see, like, I know Camrose is where we start talking, but even in Edmonton, for instance, I do a lot of work for private developers as well in Edmonton. And you know, like, mature neighborhoods are prime areas where there's more demand for new development, right, or for infill development. And we clearly see a difference in the design standards for streets in mature areas and suburban areas. And that design standard means that in mature areas, the streets are narrow, right? The blocks are shorter, and in new areas, everything is big. So what we've been trying to do is to demonstrate that extra space that you have in new areas is actually useful for like snow accumulation, for instance, or for to create like a bike lane that didn't exist, right? Or for creating a patio space in a corner store that in the past had just a drive-through. So those kind of techniques, it takes time, but we want to make sure that when you have a lot of space, you feel the weather. Like if the weather is minus 30, minus 40, and you have all that open space, you're going to feel the snow drifting, you're going to feel the wind, all those the natural effects of the winter are present, right? And then we can demonstrate to developers that, okay, so you can perhaps design your building, although it is going to be a large facade, but you can design them to resemble short entrances. So with the short entrances, for instance, people can maybe hide from the wind there, right? Or maybe there is an opportunity for they get in the door like just to stay there for a while and then get out. So there's some very minor things that I think we're trying to encourage clients to do. And then, but everything has to be demonstrated, right? It's not like just like try and see if it sticks. It has to be tested and demonstrate that it's working in some other cities. So I give an example, like my best example is my own experience when I go to a place like Banff, for instance, and you like Banff. Sometimes you just walk and getting into a store, not because you're interested in buying something, but just because you're hiding from the cold, right? And that's the thing. Like we're just trying to do something that are not very expensive, right? But there are things that you can do that are expensive and they are needed to be done. But we want to demonstrate to people that with very small changes, they can do great benefits.
Well, that's a really good approach, right? I never thought about that, right? So trying to kind of, for example, in Banff is the same thing, right? So just walk around and that encourages people in order to kind of just get into the stores, and maybe that is a hidden value, right? That you can just implement like a commercial incentive in order to kind of just go to these stores, right? And that's pretty interesting actually. And again, I also believe that there are a lot more of principles or strategies, right, in order to kind of just make certain things work in urban planning. But again, you need to kind of just base everything about data or the analysis that you already have in order to kind of make it work, right? So, no, that's pretty interesting. So, my next question will be, how do you mix and match urban principles with sustainability?
That's interesting because there's a lot of principles that we need to rely on, like people like you, architects, or some other like engineers to make it work. So there's a lot of things in urban planning are aspirational, right? Like you have a vision, or you have a desire to achieve something. So I'll give you an example. I'm working right now in a project that it's at the end of a road that was closed because of the LRT. And our client, he bought lots on both sides of the street. So he said, well, can we create a plaza in between the buildings and see how it works, right? And everybody thought, oh, that's a great idea, right? But then we retained a company to do a wind study because of the shape of the building to understand wind impacts in that space between the two buildings. And it's a very large space. So that wind study identified areas where there's not going to be good conditions for strolling, for sitting, or even for just like staying. So through that information, you have to go back to the architects and say, well, can you redesign the ground level of the building so we can create we can mitigate those wind effects. And then we talk to the landscape architects and say, well, can you also do some different plantings here so that those types of vegetation are going to buffer the winds here. So everything starts to be more like a very complex match of different expertise to say, well, we have a vision and we have a principle, like this place is going to be more sustainable if we can attract people to come to that area and they can feel comfortable. But as a planners, we have to rely on this other professions to say, well, can you mitigate this, or what do you think can be done in the design, and what do you think can be changed? So that, for instance, the architect of the work in this project even provide different lighting things to enhance the safety of the area. But there was a lot of technical expertise involved in redesign, so the actual plaza would be sustainable for people to use.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us, because you're right. Every professional are pretty well. Everybody is an expert on their field, right? On their little niche, right? And at some point we can just go a little bit further, even in the large scale or the minor scale, right? As an architect, we have certain idea on what needs to happen in the context, and as well we have certain idea what needs to happen inside or in the interior of the actual building. But the purpose of all these audios is again, right, is nobody is expert on everything, right? So you have to kind of collaborate, you have to networking with other professionals in order to see what are the blind spots in certain project in order to kind of move forward with a pretty good product, right? That at the end of the day, the end user will enjoy, right? So thank you for sharing that, because that gives us a little bit of perspective about the different elements that will come together in order to kind of provide the synergy that the actual project needs, right? So no, I think that's a pretty good insight in order to demonstrate that doing teamwork with all the disciplines working together is the best way to go, right? So no, thank you for that. And I can remember when I was in Mexico, my last job that I did there, it was a lot of research about urban planning. And I was scratching a little bit the surface, right? It was a certain needs for us as architects and the industry back home in Mexico, that there was a lot of developments, big areas of land that was developed with minor conscience about density in terms of what will be the ratios for landscape in terms of area of construction. So it was a great movement at that point in time, where it was a little bit of further study about more than trying to define the proper proportions in terms of what needs to be the actual development or infrastructure or ratios of roads or whatnot. And yeah, when I came here, it was that 6 years ago, and the name of that movement was Sustainable Urban Developments. When I got here in Canada, specifically in Red Deer, I noticed that a lot of those principles were already in place here in Canada, and more specifically in Red Deer in certain areas. And I was thinking, okay, well, we are, of course, ahead on what's going on in Mexico, but now that we have this concept of a smart city, so what you can tell in your own words what smart cities mean to you or for all the industry of urban planners. How do you like it so far? Thank you for being with us. If you want to know about the following part, just keep in touch and follow us for the next part of this episode. And please don't forget to leave me a review on whichever platform that you're using to listen in this podcast. Either good or bad. Remember, Mexicans have thicker skin. You won't hurt my feelings, that's for sure. And better yet, if it has some good criticism, so I can learn from it and improve it, that will be even greater. I understand this hasn't been perfect, but it can be better every time. I recognize your time is valuable. I would like you to enjoy this moment with me as well. Also, if you like what you get from this audio, I will recommend you to be the first to share this info with your friends, so maybe they can get something valuable from it as well. Thanks for listening, and let's meet again soon.